Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate. My name is Jasmine Stewart and I am the chairman, and Mariah Petralis is the timekeeper. The adjudicator is Miss Harana. The topic for this debate is that space is no place for civilians. The affirmative team seated to my right is from St. Dominic's Priory College. The negative team seated to my left is from Sacred Heart College. The speaking time for this debate is 5 minutes. A single warning bell will be sounded 1 minute before the speaking time, and a double bell will sound at the speaking time. A continuous bell may be rung 30 seconds after the speaking time, in which case the speaker must sit down immediately. Please switch off your mobile phones and other electronic devices. I declare this debate open and call upon the first affirmative speaker, Hilary Lim.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that space is no place for civilians. We define the topic as space, the region exceeding Earth's atmosphere beginning at 80 kilometers above sea level, as defined by NASA. Place, a particular location that is designated for use by an individual or group of people. And civilian, a person whose profession does not involve risking their lives in hazardous situations, such as the military, armed forces, and trained space specialists. We, the affirmative team, strongly agree with this statement. As the first speaker, I will be discussing the considerable expenses required to travel and inhabit space, and how our obligation to protect Earth is significantly important and at the current moment. Our second speaker will entail ethical concerns such as projected governmental meltdowns and inequity present in space inhabitants, whilst further asserting the health issues associated with space travel. Our third speaker will rebut in some of our team's case. To begin, the amount of money and resources needed to travel and facilitate life in space is extensive. NASA has announced that it costs an average of $450 million to launch the Russian Soyuz rocket for each mission. Ladies and gentlemen, this price is absurd. We can alternatively use money and resources to resolve important earthly concerns relevant and crucial to today's society, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and poverty. As specified by the Borgen Project, the cost of resolving poverty on Earth is $175 billion annually for 20 years. However, the price for sending the entirety of our population into space exceeds this number astronomically. With all the suffering in our world, starvation, disease, persecution, and natural disasters, why must we invest public money on the scientific research enterprise, which has proved itself unnecessary in society's current situation? Additionally, following NASA's 2021 price list, the cost per crew member for a day's worth of food and water aboard the International Space Station is $2,000. It is undeniable that this money should be directed to projects that can assist the people living on Earth. Here and now, let's improve the quality of life for all humans right now, rather than going off on a tangent that ultimately is a fairy tale. With an associated exorbitant cost, quite frankly, space travel and inhabitants is a ridiculous concept, which cannot be justified when the facts are examined. My last point is that it is our obligation to protect Earth. We humans have been on this Earth for 6 million years. We have exploited its resources and its perfect livability through the further progression of the Industrial Revolution and digitalism. Earth will only last a further 1 billion years, but we can extend this period by putting money into the survival of Earth instead of space exploration. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the world needs to spend $73 trillion on 5 areas of technology to eliminate toxic emissions and meet the Paris Agreement's goal of halting global warming. This price is still beneath the cost of sending all of the Earth to space. As stated by exoplanet exploration, among trillions of planets, we are home alone, confirmed by increasingly powerful telescopes, and despite research of the solar system. Humanity can only live on Earth. These sources undoubtedly accentuate that space is no place for civilians. In conclusion, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, We, the Affirmative team, strongly believe that the civilian presence in space is undeniably illogical, as it is a ridiculous use of money and resources. Humanity must protect Earth. It is our obligation. It is how we, as a society, can progress and move forward. Space is a place to be admired and enjoyed from Earth, for the imagination of Hollywood filmmakers, but most definitely not for civilians. Thank you.
I call upon the first negative speaker, Annalise Pittman.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that space is no place for civilians. We, the negative team, believe this to be irrefutably false. We agree with the definition given by the affirmative team. The first affirmative speaker has attempted to convince you that we should put resources and money into Earth instead of going to space. This is false because this is not replacing Earth. It is merely providing another place for civilians to live, thrive, and survive on. Furthermore, that idea that we should focus on saving Earth rather than replacing it does not deny the fact that space is a place for civilians, which has been proven and stated. Today, I will be speaking to you about how space is the way of the future, and the money spent on space exploration is worth it. Our second speaker, Grace, will talk about how space travel is proven to be safe and we have the technology available. Our third speaker, Caitlin, will rebut and sum up our team case. On to my first point. Space has already been a place for civilians and is the way of the future. Space exploration began on October 4th, 1957, and since the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, a whole new world was opened that before wasn't thought possible. 12 astronauts have walked on the moon, but Neil Armstrong's words still inspire the future. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Civilians have always explored. It's in our nature to go out and see what's out there. If we hadn't, many things would have gone unnoticed. Curiosity is part of human development, the process of learning and discovering. Virgin Galactic, run by the billionaire Richard Branson, is vying with Blue Origin, run by Jeff Bezos, and SpaceX, run by Elon Musk, to develop a space tourism market for civilians. With successful missions run by these companies, their investors know that space will become a space for civilians. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration state, their mission is to return to places previously explored with ambitious new missions and technologies. Much remains to be learnt about the moon and how we might use its resources to support human habitation elsewhere and on Earth. The journey to Mars is just the beginning of the eventual colonization. NASA aims to send humans to the planet in the 2030s. If the mission is successful, this could change the world. The technology to put humans into space has existed for decades. More than 500 astronauts have flown. The Russian government has even put 7 paying civilian customers to the International Space Station in the previous decade and plans to do so again. Former astronaut Kelly Thornton stated upon her retirement from NASA, "The next time I go into space, I'll be able to take my family with me." Now on to my second point. The money spent on space exploration is well spent and worth it. As I have previously stated, space tourism is a rapidly growing possibility for civilians, and the money involved can result in great profit. A number of economic analysts have predicted that global space tourism could grow to $1.7 billion by 2027. That would generate a significant number of new jobs and capabilities in the emerging space tourism economy, says Alan Ladwig, author of See You in Orbit, Our Dream of Spaceflight. The future of STEM and great profit is through space tourism. Space livability resolves issues concerning humanity. Examples include overpopulation. It's a myth that we can't afford space. Confirmation that space pays may be found in the 1989 Chapman Research Report, which examined just 259 non-space applications of NASA technology during 8 years, 1976 to 1984, and found more than $21.6 billion in sales and benefits, 352,000 mostly skilled jobs created, and saved $355 million in federal corporate income taxes. Other benefits, not quantified in the study, included state corporation income taxes, individual person income taxes, federal and state, paid by those 352,000 workers. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we as the negative team firmly believe that space is a place for civilians. We have been to space before, and exploring space is the way of the future. It is also money well spent. Instead of the world being our oyster, we can push a little further. The universe is our oyster. Thank you.
I call upon the second affirmative speaker, Vanessa Fulton.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that space is no place for civilians. We, the affirmative team, strongly agree with the statement. Tonight, as the second speaker, I will be arguing ethical issues as a result of unstable societal structures due to the inhabitants of space, whilst asserting health concerns significantly affecting one's psychological and physical state. But before I present my team's case, I must mention numerous flaws present in the opposition's argument. The opposition has suggested that the money spent on space exploration is well spent and worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, within the global community, poverty, disease, violence, global warming, and injustice abound. Our ignorance towards humanitarian adversity portrays immense negligence. According to Ethan Siegel in a Forbes article, addressing the sufferings apparent in our world is indicating an advancement of humanity. It is progress. We, as the affirmative team, strongly emphasize that human compassion and the expression of justice should never be considered of less significance than a step on the moon, accentuating that space is no place for civilians. The first speaker has also announced that space is another place to thrive and survive. Nevertheless, people venturing into space is immensely fragile. They require a continuous supply of oxygen, water, food, and shelter, as delineated by our first speaker, and must endure long intervals of weightlessness. The possible loss of individuals, of citizens, will be harrowing. Humans are not expendable. They are lives. They are people. They are of immense value. Ladies and gentlemen, these lives should not be neglected into threatening circumstances, emphasizing that space is no place for civilians. To begin, aspirations of space colonization undoubtedly provoke ethical concerns, threatening legal frameworks, political structures, and social corruption. The UN sponsored the 1957 Outer Space Treaty, which established space as a province of all mankind, therefore prohibiting nations from claiming territorial sovereignty. Without defined divisions of boundaries and constitutions implemented to space inhabitants, issues of ownership will be of concern. Without defined borders and implemented governmental systems, civilians simply cannot live in space. According to Professor Oleska, the absence of social order within a civilization will exacerbate complications, elevating potential misconduct and corruption. The representation of a disorganized society. Furthermore, it is discernible that humanity will only abandon Earth in moments of absolute desperation, such in the events of natural disasters, which have created an uninhabitable planet, as implied by the New York Intelligencer. I intend to propose this question. What approach will the international community undergo to equitably appoint people who depart for an opportunity at survival and those who stay behind on Earth? Will there even be a just decision, or will humanity entrust in the authority of capitalism to discriminate? Ladies and gentlemen, the pursuit for inhabitants in space will prompt ethical concerns and apparent turmoil in a society where order is not justified, reinforcing the statement that space is no place for civilians. Moreover, recognized health concerns further accentuate why civilians' presence in space is not appropriate. As asserted by Dr. Beerley, medical adversities frequently encountered by astronauts in space include anemia, muscle degeneration, bone atrophy, and declining immunity, alongside numerous others. Prolonged duration in space can permanently damage physical state and cause suffering. Additionally, the confined space and absence of natural settings will provoke psychological burdens and impair cognitive functions. Increased radiation exposure elevates risk of cancer, degenerative diseases, and heart problems, as stated by Headspace. Combined impacts of physical and mental exertion result in long-lasting consequences, implying that space is no place for civilians. To conclude, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, the underlying health burdens accompanied by ethical issues associated with space colonization and exploration immensely underline how space is not and will never be a place for civilians. Thank you.
I call upon the second negative speaker, Grace Stones.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that space is no place for civilians. We, the negative team, believe this to be irrefutably false. The first affirmative speaker has tried to tell you that the amount of money and resources spent on space travel is unrealistic. Though it is true the concept of the price tag is viewed as a major roadblock, civilian space travel will actually create jobs and money, which outweighs the cost entirely. According to NASA.org, more frequent space travel will create 352,000 jobs and $355 million in federal income. The profit is phenomenal, and the repercussions would have positive effects on both the economy and the unemployment rate. It is not logical to dwell on the price tag, as it creates both jobs and money, whose effects completely outweigh the cost. The first affirmative speaker has also tried to tell you that it is crucial to take care of the environment. We, the negative team, agree that the Earth is in a vulnerable state, though civilians are not abandoning Earth. We are simply visiting space, and it is misleading to think otherwise. There is no reason as to why society could not save Earth and let civilians travel in space. As stated earlier by our first speaker, Annalise, the idea that space travel is unfeasible is a myth, only adding as to why it is possible to both save the Earth and travel to space without abandoning Earth. The second affirmative speaker has tried to tell you that we are ignoring justice issues such as world poverty. This is absolutely false due to the fact that we are actually providing another place which civilians can live, survive and thrive, which only provides more resources and money, as our first speaker Annalise has already stated, which can be put into providing solutions to these issues, such as poverty. The second affirmative speaker has also tried to tell you that space contributes to negative health issues. This is completely wrong due to the fact that alterations are constantly made to spacecrafts to ensure maximum safety. While space travel may seem daunting, it is becoming highly accessible and safe for civilians and safe for civilians. For over 50 years, NASA's Human Research Program, or HRP, has studied what happens to the human body in space. Researchers are using what they learned to design procedures, devices, and strategies to keep astronauts safe and healthy throughout their mission, both physically and mentally. Space travel for citizens is proven to be safe due to the fact that designs are always changing and improving, which I'll explain further in my point. Today, our first speaker, Annalise, has already spoken to you about how space is the way of the future and how the money spent on space exploration is worth it. Today, I will be talking to you about how space travel is proven to be safe and how we have the technology available, therefore should use it. And our third speaker, Caitlin, will rebut and sum up our case. Now to my first point, that space travel is proven to be safe due to the fact that alterations are constantly made. While space travel can interest many civilians, it can also raise fears of survival. Space companies, however, are constantly changing their spacecraft in order to be safe. Companies do not begin another mission before the most recent craft has landed, been studied, and altered for the better. A quote from spacedisasters.org states, CAIB produced a damning assessment of the culture at NASA that had led to the foam problem and other safety issues. After the spacecraft's safe conclusion, NASA deemed the program ready to move forward and shuttles resumed flying several times a year. Not only do companies such as NASA look at the safety of the spacecraft, they also draw attention to the effects space travel has on mental and physical health. NASA specifically has implemented a program which mentally prepares astronauts for missions through virtual reality. Headspace.edu states, fortunately, NASA is making efforts to decrease mental health risk for astronauts. A large proportion of these efforts include designing realistic simulations of space trips here on Earth. This program is accessible for all visiting space, and while it's optional, it is highly recommended. Overall, space is a place for civilians due to the fact that companies such as NASA always change their designs to improve the safety of citizens. Which leads me to my second point, that the technology is available, therefore we should embrace the option. We as a society have the required technology which allows us to travel to and from space without compromising the safety of civilians. Our technology is developing at an exponential rate with an increasing amount of jobs in STEM, only adding as to why they should have space travel in civilians. This shows that it is not only available but also very accessible for companies to produce these rockets. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we the negative team believe that space travel is for civilians, as going to space has been proven to be safe and the required technology is completely available. Thank you.
I call upon the third affirmative speaker, Bianca Scarlo.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that space is no place for civilians. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is undeniably true. I will now proceed to mention numerous flaws present in the negative team's case. The first speaker has mentioned that space is the way of the future. However, why should we waste time attempting to search for unknown aspects of the universe when our intelligence of Earth is limited? Why not devote time to research to ensure the protection of an environment that is presently habitable instead of depleting Earth's resources to fly into space? Citizens' involvement in space is not imperative to humanity's survival. Extensive inquiry to retain our home is. This is how we safeguard our society, our existence, our future. The second speaker has falsely asserted that space travel is proven to be safe. According to a Scientific American article by David Goldsmith, approximately 3% of astronauts who have journeyed into space have not survived. Though, as our opposition will argue, our greater awareness will reduce this percentage. Yet space tourism, a phrase that suggests ordinary people can enjoy the pleasure of a journey out of this earth, conceals the apparent risks, such as exposure to ionizing radiation, alongside various other unmentioned health issues, as stated by our second speaker. We must not send vulnerable citizens into space when numerous hazards are prevalent. The first speaker has informed you that curiosity is a part of human development. Recently, it has been publicised that Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic flight encountered severe difficulties with the flight's trajectory. Yet alongside this, pilots Dave McKay and Michael Masucci enlightened readers of The New Yorker this month on Virgin's pernicious safety culture. During a 2019 flight, the ship sustained significant damage when numerous components came unglued. But management concealed this issue and verified that it was safe to fly, when evidently it was not. Can civilian safety be assured when it is conspicuous that companies valuing space for profit are hiding incidents that could potentially endanger lives? The first speaker has mentioned that space exploration contributes to advancements in the STEM field. Advancements in scientific endeavours can successfully occur without the presence of civilians, since data is frequently acquired by space probes, telescopes and rovers, as implied by the Canadian Space Agency. Therefore, it is utterly irrelevant for civilians to enter space when technological apparatus can readily execute the required task. The second speaker has implied that space exploration will outweigh the cost of space travel. It is apparent that lavish investments in space exploration could alternatively be devoted to providing opportunities of education for developing nations, resolving humanitarian crises present, and consequences of climate change. Since the establishment of NASA, the United States has spent 875 billion Australian dollars on space exploration, more than sufficient to conclude the sufferings of poverty, as estimated by the United Nations and reinforced by our first speaker. Evidently, reductions in poverty would elevate the economic ecosystem. Thus, the creation of employment initiated by the space industry is inferior to the subsequent impact of global issues, reinforcing the statement that space is no place for civilians. Our first speaker has asserted the considerable expenses and resources associated with space travel and inhabitants. She continued to underline how it is our obligation as individuals and as a society to ensure the conservation of our Earth, our home, rather than aimlessly exploring space. Our second speaker has informed you of the ethical concerns legally, politically, socially prominent in space exploration. Furthermore, she argued that numerous health repercussions, both physically and psychologically, will be observed in citizens entering space. To conclude, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it is indisputable that space cannot and will never be suitable for civilians. Thank you.
I call upon the third negative speaker, Caitlin Bailey.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that space is no place for civilians. We, the negative team, believe that this statement is irrefutably false. The first speaker on the affirmative team has attempted to convince you that the money is too expensive. This is absolutely false because, according to NSS.org, it is a myth that we can't afford space. Confirmation that space pays is found in the Chapman Research Report, which examined 259 non-space applications of NASA technology during just 8 years. They found more than $21.6 billion in sales and benefits, 352,000 jobs created or saved, and $355 million in federal corporate income taxes. Additionally, other benefits included are state corporate income taxes, individual income taxes, and incalculable benefits resulting from lives saved and improved quality of life. This explains that space actually creates money in more ways than just one, which simply displays itself as a place for civilians. The first affirmative speaker has also tried to tell you that it's humans' obligation to stay on Earth. Although humans may have lived on Earth for millions of years, it does not deny the fact that space is a place for civilians. Therefore, this point is quite irrelevant. The second speaker on the affirmative team has attempted to convince you that space is not safe and causes mental and physical health issues. This is completely false because, as our second speaker Grace has already informed you, according to NASA.gov, for over 50 years, NASA's Human Research Program has studied what happens to the human body in space. They are using what they learned to design procedures, devices, and strategies to keep astronauts safe and healthy throughout their missions. We have the technology and resources available for civilians to travel and live in space. Therefore, it is only logical that we use this technology. Furthermore, NASA is making efforts to decrease mental health risks for astronauts. A large portion of these efforts include designing realistic simulations of space missions here on Earth. If civilians were to travel to space, this would also be available for use. The third speaker on the affirmative team has attempted to convince you that approximately 3% of astronauts who have begun a journey into space have not survived. Although this may be true for the past, it will not be true for the future. From these accidents, we have learned and improved spacecrafts and rockets. Furthermore, it is an astronaut's job to explore space, whereas civilians would be sent to a place already explored and determined as safe. You simply cannot compare astronauts and civilian situations. Therefore, this statistic is irrelevant. The third affirmative speaker has also tried to tell you that we should safeguard Earth and focus our resources on Earth instead of space. This is false because, as our first speaker has already stated, space is creating 352,000 jobs and $21.6 billion, which was saved according to NASA.gov. If this isn't looking after the Earth, then what is? Jobs in STEM are crucial, and space exploration does just that. It benefits us in ways more than one. The third speaker has also tried to tell you that curiosity is a part of human development. Although this may be true, our first speaker, Annalise, did not say that this is crucial for the development of space travel, but instead a civilian interest. Our first speaker, Annalise, has already informed you that this is the way of the future, explaining how exploration began on October 4th, 1957, and since then it has launched a whole world that before was thought to not even be possible. She has also told you that the money spent on space is in fact worth it. According to the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources, their goal is to triple the size of the sector and promise to create 20,000 Australian jobs by 2030. Our second speaker, Grace, has already told you that space travel is proven to be safe because alterations are constantly made. For example, NASA's Human Research Program has studied what happens to the human body for 50 years, and that protects the physical health of those travelling to space. They also make efforts to decrease mental health risks too. She has also said that the technology is available, therefore we should embrace the option. Companies such as NASA and SpaceX have created and modified their design to ensure maximum human safety. Consequently, it is only logical to use this technology.
So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we the negative team believe that space is a place for civilians because it is the way of the future. There are a vast amount of financial benefits, it is proven to be safe, and we have the technology available. Thank you.
We now come to question time. For the next 3 minutes, teams are invited to take turns to ask each other questions about the debate. That is, the affirmative will ask a question, then the negative team, then the affirmative team, and so on. A team is free to indicate if it has no questions. I now invite the affirmative team to ask its first question.
So can you elaborate on the examples of improvements or technological advancements that companies such as Virgin Atlantic has made to make space travel safe?
Okay, so an example of like when they have created spacecrafts that are like really safe for civilians to travel is actually what Jeff Bezos did, which was when I've got a quote. When Bezos launched into space from Tuesday morning from Blue Origin's facilities in town. Jeff Bezos has become the second billionaire this month to reach the edge of space, and he did so in aboard a rocket he built by Blue Origin, which just shows like there are so many companies which are able to produce these safe aircrafts.
So your second speaker said that exposure to radiation could result in health concerns, but where exactly in space is the radiation, and wouldn't we have efficient protection against such things?
So space radiation occurs from the sun, so there is radiation emitted from the sun, and this proves to show that not all technological advancements have been made to actually protect us from all of that radiation. So, yeah.
So, what jobs can the presence of civilians in space actually create?
Well, of course, a lot of STEM-focused jobs are created through that. So the department in Australia that involves the science, they have promised to triple the size of the sector and create tens of thousands of jobs in this area with such advancements that are based around space. So we believe that this will benefit the public by creating all of these jobs.
Do you believe that as a society we could both address civilian space travel and social justice issues as they are both feasible?
Yes, we do. However, we're saying trained professionals can still go into space. We believe that. But we're saying civilians, it's unnecessary for them to go into space when we still have all these issues on Earth that involve civilians themselves. So astronauts, trained specialists, military, they can still go into space. That's their job. But the rest of the money should not be used for civilians. It should be used for civilians on Earth.
Yeah, we believe that space research is very much crucial because it somewhat contributes to our understanding of the Earth, and we agree with that. However, space endeavours are very dangerous. There are multiple health concerns and a lot of threatening circumstances to human health. So that's why it should only be performed by trained space specialists.
While the adjudicator finalises the results, I will read this evening's chairman notices. We are delighted to announce that subject to COVID restrictions, the grand finals will be held in the House of Assembly Chamber, Parliament House, on Saturday 25th of September 2021. There will likely be a need to RSVP for contact tracing purposes, so please keep an eye out for this information. Topic and side information for the semi-finals will be available on the Debating SA website from tomorrow morning. Please be sure to check your side and debate time information carefully. Debates will be held here at the same venue next week. All semi-final debates will be held here at Nazareth again next week. I now invite the adjudicator, Miss Harina, forward.
Alright, so I'm going to start off by saying congratulations to both teams. Getting to the quarterfinals is not an easy feat. You've gone through a lot to get here, and also thank you to the parents that have supported them throughout the season, especially with all the demands of COVID and the whole changing of situation. So as you all know by now, I give some individual feedback and then award and debate at the end. So first up, we had our first speaker, Hillary. So you mentioned the keywords, which was space, place, and civilian. Did you refer to any dictionary sources for place and civilian by any chance? No. So it's really important that you do need to refer to perhaps Oxford or Cambridge, just to increase the level of credibility to the definition that you're stating, and also just to make sure that it comes from a place where you're not just making things up to suit your team, which some teams do try to manipulate the definition so that they can win, but then just having that backing from the dictionary would just make it more fair, basically, for both sides. And I think you could have elaborated a little bit more, perhaps on another point, because you do not have to do rebuttal, so then you have that leeway with your timing, perhaps to add in one more point for your opening. You did have a lot of great sources when you said that there are a lot of earthly concerns, and we as human beings have an obligation to kind of protect our current home and not explore unnecessary explorations towards space. So yeah, just keep in mind your definitions as first speakers. If any of you ever go into that again, you do need to credit your dictionary that you used. But really great job, really great opening. So an interesting start to tonight's debate. Well done. All right, and next up we had Annalise. Annalise, yeah. So I really liked how you mentioned that there's already been 7 paying civilians from the Russian government, so they have gone to space. So that was quite interesting. You also mentioned that there's a lot of facts and figures where we have saved a lot of money. I would just like you to link it again back to the topic, especially when you mention a lot of figures. We can kind of get lost in where you're going. So especially if you have a lot of facts and figures or statistics, then at the end you have to link it back to why it's relevant and not just expect the audience to know where you're trying to go or what you're trying to get. But I think the impact of what you were trying to say was quite strong. You mentioned how there is an opportunity for civilians to prosper into space. So I think that's what I was getting from you. And you also said that there has already been civilians that's been taken into space. Therefore, it is quite credible and quite opportunistic of us to explore that further. So really great opening. So yeah, just make sure to link back to your arguments back to the topic. But really great use of research and kind of your thought process was quite evident as well. So well done.
Thank you.
All right, and next up we had Vanessa. So I kind of liked how you engaged with your audience a little bit. You mentioned how there's quite a strong space treaty where no sovereignty is allowed in space. Therefore, it's hard to control where the civilians would go, and therefore there could be kind of opportunities for capitalism to discriminate. So it's quite strong. Your thinking was really of higher level, so I was quite impressed by your debate tonight. You also, once again, explored the health concerns and medical adversity space, which was kind of picked up upon by the negative team saying, oh, there's already been kind of components that we've improved to prevent that. But your kind of debate was in a way that was quite storytelling, and just your reiterations of why civilians have no place in space was quite strong as well. So it reminded us throughout what you were saying that once again your team is what we should be persuaded by, what we should listen to. So you were quite effective as a speaker at persuading and engaging your audience is what I'm trying to get. But really great use of sources as well. Yeah, your UN research of 1957 was quite high level, so didn't have anything much negative to say. And yeah, your rebuttal, maybe perhaps give a little bit more, because they did mention quite great points, so specifically address those. But you mentioned how humans, if they are in space, need to be continuously supplied by things that is not quite freely available already in where they are. So, well done. All right, and next up we have Grace. So, your timing was quite on the dot, I must say. That was quite lucky, because you were about to be continuously belled down, but you finished your speech quite quickly. So that was quite lucky. So you gave a lot of rebuttal, which was really great. I think that was why you were kind of on the dot with your timing, because you did try and address a lot of their affirmative team's points, so which was really great. You mentioned how civilians can still travel and visit space, therefore it is providing a space for them. And your points about how there's various alterations to spacecraft already increases their safety and security inside space. And also your point about the virtual realistic simulations was really great, kind of rebutted what they said about mental states and distractions that they might get. So just really great points. I didn't really get much signposting in your speech, so I think you would really benefit from saying my first point, my second point, just so we know what specifically your part of your speech you're addressing and where you are at. It also allows you to kind of know against the time where you're at. So if you haven't heard the bell and you're still at your first or second point, that means you must keep moving or shorten some parts just so to fit within the time. Because you are, if that did happen, then you could have lost some points. So that was really lucky it didn't happen now, but there is a chance it could happen maybe in your future debates. So just keep an eye on signposting, really effective at staying structured. And just really staying on top of things. But really great rebuttal points. So once again, you reiterated there's plenty jobs, economy, and employment rates gained. So really strong statistical use, which was great collaboration with your first speaker, who has kind of introduced that for tonight's debate. But yeah, well done. So just be Alright, and then our third speakers, just be really careful of introducing new points, because I think that did happen in both teams tonight. You can state something if it's already been stated earlier by your previous speakers. So it can't be completely a new idea, but it can be something that's just enhancing what's already been said, or if it's general knowledge that anyone can know. So Bianca, your point about how David Goldsmith, 3% of astronauts, I get that it's kind of stating the safety aspect that's being stated by your previous speakers, but it's kind of new information. So a way to get around that would have been to mention that earlier by either your first or second speaker, and then you just restate it. Because then some adjudicators are quite strict, especially with the semifinals and finals. If you do state something new completely with a new source, they won't consider that at all. So especially going forwards into senior level, just be careful for third speakers who don't introduce something completely new, because then it's really unfair towards the last speaker, because then they won't have time to kind of rebut that. So yeah, your point as well on the New Yorker safety culture, has that been stated previously by your other speakers?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, so just be really careful, because then I did have to deduct relevance points, because that wasn't really stated in fact. So really this goes to show how strongly you've worked together as a team in preparation, so then you know which points are quite strong that has been given and previously stated. But your point about how civilians don't need to be in space because technology such as space probes are able to already provide us with the relevant important information was quite strong. I think that was one of your strongest rebuttals as a team. The civilians don't need to go because machines can take our place, and therefore do the things we can't do without risking our lives, which is something that was quite strongly explored by your second speaker. So you mentioned as well that there's already, once again, they're hiding information to endanger lives. I didn't consider that quite relevant because, once again, new information. But it's quite strong that your team kind of said that we should stay within the confines of Earth, and that so then we can kind of address the problems that we already have and are facing. But really great job. I just wish that I could have heard some of your points a little bit earlier on as your team. But well done. All right, and our final speaker, Caitlin. So you mentioned how you restated kind of your rebuttal. You said that space creates many opportunities. And the fact about the human research was again restated, so great collaboration and cohesion with your other speakers. The fact about tripling Australian jobs, was that previously stated as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's excellent. So I was just unaware of that one. So just make sure to say it's as stated previously by our first speaker. And I think you have done that when you were summarizing, but also when giving rebuttal. If you kind of retouch back on ideas, you just need to restate it. But really great rebuttal and points coming from you. I think it was really strong, especially towards the end. You said we already have the technology available. We've already sent people there before. And I liked how you kind of said that civilians are different to astronauts, so they have different roles. So your rebuttal was quite impressive when you said that they're already going to be sent to a place where that's already been explored to ensure safety as well. So yeah, just this would have gone back into the definitions for the topic when what is the civilian meaning? Is it different to someone who has a role in space already, such as an astronaut? So I think you could have actually made that point stronger if you disagreed with the definition. So also don't just agree with the definitions given by the affirmative team. Make sure that you actually listen to it and use it in a way that will really benefit what you're trying to say. So if you mention how we agreed with some parts of their definition but disagree with the fact that civilians mean just your ordinary, next door neighbor, not someone who's experienced at all, then I think that would have changed things for both teams. So just really listen carefully, but was really impressed by your rebuttal, and yeah, well done. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. So I do have to announce a winner to tonight's debate, and it has gone to the team, which just really gave quite a great level of rebuttal and linking back to the topic. So this has gone to the negative team. Congratulations. It was quite close. It was really quite close. There was a 1 point difference. So must say, I was really impressed with the level of debate I've heard tonight. And I also need to acknowledge Vanessa for her really great thinking and use of so this is the last chance for the semi-final team to ask for any questions, because further on you won't get any feedback at all. Thank you all for providing a really great debate, and Chairman, over to you.
I call upon a member of the runner-up team to give a vote of thanks.
So first of all, I would like to thank our adjudicator. Thank you for your insightful feedback, which will really help us in next year's debate and rounds. Thank you also to our chairman and our timekeeper for running the debate so smoothly. And thank you to our opposition for being here today. You guys did so great, and I wish you all the best of luck in the upcoming rounds. Yeah. And thank you to Ms. Mason for propelling us through this challenging time. Your empathy and your understanding, we are very grateful for that. And thank you to our audience today for your attention. It's really encouraging when we're standing up here and telling our speech to have all the attention focused on that. So thank you and have a good night.
I call upon a member of the winning team to second that vote of thanks.
We would like to first thank the Affirmative team. You guys had some really strong points and it was actually a very enjoyable debate. Our timekeeper and our chairman and our adjudicator for volunteering your time and giving us some really great feedback by Vanessa, and our friends and family all for coming and supporting us, and our teacher for helping us.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance. I now declare this debate closed.